What's up, guys? So I was expecting to have the 200 to 800 millimeter Canon RF lens in my hands, testing it out over the Christmas break. It's supposed to be released December 15th. I got an on back order. Yeah, I went out and ordered that probably within hours of it being announced, but we know it's going to be a huge demand for that lens. That being said, I thought about doing 2 or 3 pre-orders, one on B&H, one on Amazon. But it'd be my luck I'd get 3 lenses at the door, right? So it is what it is. If you notice, though, over this Christmas break, we've had a ton of sales on camera equipment. And there's one camera system I've been eyeing for the longest time. And it's not what you think. It's not a full frame. It's actually obviously the title of this video, medium format. This is the GFX100S. It's 102 megapixel. I have an 800 mil lens, Canon lens on this. Canon mount, Canon EF. And so this is possible with the GFX adapter. Allows basically any Canon lens to kind of mount up. Now, this 800 mil has problems with the focus, but my Sigma 300 to 800 does not. That seems to work. What we're going to do, take this in the backyard, put on the 150 to 600 and try it out. The focus works fairly fast with this lens. It's great. There's a little bit of vignetting, which we'll talk about. And then the 70 to 200, 2.8, kind of a bokeh monster. What this does, since it has a crop factor of 0.8, is your 800 mil kind of looks like a 640 mil, the field of view, which then allows you to get closer, which that's some of the advantages, believe it or not. It's kind of like micro four thirds in reverse, where you, instead of getting a lot of distance or a lot of magnification, it kind of shortens things up, kind of compresses, get you close to where your background blur is really noticeable. So as we get into this, let's get into the setup. But guys, look at the image quality of some of the birds. Look at the background blur. Look at the noise ratio. Look at the colors. Look at the focus, the stabilization, that kind of stuff. Look and kind of compare it against a lot of your other systems. See what you think. That being said, get you in here for 5 minutes. We'll come back and we'll start reviewing some of the images, some of the resolution, some of my thoughts. Okay, let's look at some of the image quality. Let's look at resolution, dynamic range, noise ratio, background blur, all that kind of stuff. What are my kind of findings? Now, if we look at the resolution, there's a couple squirrel shots, very, very detailed. When you go in, you can kind of, it's like two cameras in one. You have 102 megapixels, but then you kind of have a crop mode, which is 60 megapixels, if you want to use that. But that allows you to do a lot of different cropping. When we dig into the image, anywhere from ISO 400 to 3200, it's very, very clean, very usable. I like it so far. I don't notice that. The background blur is off the charts. And that's one of the things. You guys notice my backyard is very small. I got flagpoles, I got fences. If we compare the background blur to something like a point and shoot, anything else, you'll notice it just melts away. You're in a different world. It kind of hides your environment, which that's what you want. You just don't want anything distracting. That's one of the main advantages to the medium format. When you get in close, you can kind of close that gap. I mean, if you have a cell phone and you get super close, you can get nice background blur that kind of gets rid of the rest of the world, and that's what this helps you do. So there's some times where I've been in forests where I've used APS-C and then switched to full frame and noticed like, wow, it looks just much better. It kind of just gets rid of a little bit of that distracting stuff. I'm assuming, haven't done yet, I've been out doing some wildlife photography for deer. That's the case. It's going to even help even more because essentially this 70 to 200 becomes like a 160 to 2.2. I mean, I know it's the same lens. You can argue about the differences there, but yeah, we can, at the worst case, I can just go to 35 millimeter format and get a 70 to 2.8, a 70 to 200 2.8. So that works extremely well. Dynamic range, I know I've seen tons of Micro Four Thirds point shoots that absolutely just melt away when you hit a little bit of fur that has a little bit of white in it. It's just gone. That's just the way it is with the smaller sensors. Full frame, it's totally noticeable with the smaller sensors. Full frame, it's much closer. To me, the gradations are a little bit better, but that's maybe being my imagination. Definitely with the Sigma FP that didn't handle highlights as well as I wanted, and the noise ratio from the Sigma FP was a little tight. For some reason, this Fuji handles noise very well. I was surprised. I expected it to be more looking like the Sony R5, R4, where you're getting these little dots everywhere. I haven't noticed it with this. Using 3200 ISO, it just seems to work really, really well. So overall, conclusions. Can you use the Fuji GFX100 for wildlife? Absolutely, with some compromises. This is not a Z9. This is not a Z8. It's not a replacement. Actually, I put a lot of different posts out on forums asking, and everyone came back with, you'd be better served going with a full frame camera. And I would agree with that. There's some certain things I'm looking at. I like general cameras. Like if you're going to shoot with the camera, I want it to be usable in all aspects. Much like the Nikon 850, D850, that DSLR is like one of the best DSLRs ever built. It could do sports, it could do wildlife, portrait. There's people using that thing for everything. And the dynamic range on it was great. Yeah, this kind of reminds me of that. Just a general all-arounder. 5 frames a second. It's got a dedicated video button on it, so you switch back and forth. Now remind, if you're taking 10 or 15 photos at 100 megapixels, it takes a while to write to your card. You want the fastest card possible, and you can't shoot video until it's done writing. So that's one of the things that was hitting up in the wildlife arena. Was you pull the trigger, you're waiting, and you're like, okay, I want to do video. You're still waiting. But that's overall performance, average, probably at best, but the image quality, dynamic range, bokeh, the subject pop was off the charts. So there you have it, guys. I kind of want to know what you think. The GFX Fringer adapter saves this camera because right now there's not a whole lot of native wildlife lenses. They're supposed to come out with a 500mm f5.6. Yeah, but I'm really worried about that price tag because it could be off the charts, and hopefully they don't do that. I think Fuji has a good position where they had the APS-C, which is rock solid. They kind of dominate that, in my opinion. 40 megapixel APS-C sensor, the H2, that's a great looking wildlife camera. And then they skip full frame and go to medium format. I think the medium, that full frame is just too busy for Fuji really to step out. But this works for them. And the price of the medium format stuff is coming down to the price of a full frame camera. So why not? So there you guys have it. Again, any questions, comments, write it down below, and I'll see you next week.